All right, good morning, everybody. Looks like we're live on both platforms. And this is our Design Shop Talk. My name is Samantha Mirabal, and here to see what questions you have and get them answered. If you have questions ahead of time, you can always email them to applications@melco.com. You can type them in when, I post in roughly 4 groups on Facebook looking for questions. So you can post on any of those forums, whatever questions you have, and I'll get them pulled in for the week and see what we could do to help you out. So I'll start off with some of the ones I got ahead of time. Give me a moment to get YouTube up. I already have Facebook Live. I want to make sure I can see your comments over on my other monitor here. Mute. There we go. Okay, so now I've got both of them. All right, so I'll start off with the questions that I already have. And if you have other ones, good morning, Peggy in Texas. Weather's looking nicer. All right, so start off real quick with a new feature with that's in V11 that wasn't there before. So for rotating designs, let's go over to DesignShop. So in the past, when you go to rotate things, what you would do is, let's see, I want to go I'm just going to grab a file. There, let's just open that one for now. All right, so to rotate, what you would do is down here with the W or the H, you would select your element, click on the W or the H. This is how you do it in V10, right? So you'd type in 90. That's one way to rotate by angle for 90 degrees. And of course, if you can do it manually by eyeballing it. But there's new improved ways. So let's see with V11, now when you select stuff, there's these buttons down here, so you can do quick rotations by using these 2 icons at the bottom of the screen. Okay, they only are visible when you have something selected, because if you don't have anything selected, there's nothing to rotate. So there's a question typed in: what are the major differences between V10 and V11? How much is the upgrade? I'm honest to goodness, I have no idea how much the upgrade is. There's so many factors that apply. What if you're upgrading from V9 versus V10, if you're going from light to editor, if you're going, there's just so many different ones of what version from to that affect what the pricing is. So the best thing I could say is contact your sales rep. I know they've been insanely flooded, but I would just try to get them on the phone and talk to them directly is what I would do. Just to discuss what options you have and what would be the best way. Good morning, Edith and Nancy and Travis. So that's kind of the one quick, what I'm trying to do is on a weekly basis to just highlight something new. So last week we did the primer stitch, stipple stitch, and covered those 2. I know the other guys, when they do them, they're trying to do the same sort of thing. We've got a list going of all different features that we're trying to just do a quick demo of something new so that we can, walk through them as time goes on, so you can always see new tricks. All right. So Travis, your question is much along the lines of some of the others that were typed in. What is the price? Reach out to your sales guy. I don't have pricing information, unfortunately. I asked if there was some general prices I could state on these, and they said no. There's too many variables for me just to give a one number. New features in action. We're doing those on a weekly basis now, and this one's fun. I really like this idea. I don't have it for you, but I did talk to the guys about doing a little video of, oops, I did it again, on common problems from beginner sense. We all thought that was pretty funny. So I don't know if we'll actually do it, but I threw it out there. So hopefully we'll see what happens with that. Good morning, Chris on YouTube. Let's see. If someone creates a design, there's a question typed in, creates a design in 11, can it open in DS10? So there is a compatibility version of VS10 that you would need to get it to open in wireframe format. If you save off an OFM from V11 and they're running the old version of V10, what will happen when they open it? It'll open up and expanded. which is fine. You know, if they're not going to make any changes to it, that works just fine. It'll show up as expanded format. If you want the wireframes, you've got to get the update to V10, which is, it's just a service pack that will add the compatibility that puts the wireframes back onto V10. And the guys just gave you a link, Travis, on how that's done. Okay. I'm new to DS. I have fonts collected in BX format and PES. How do I add them without having to bring in each letter one at a time? So you would have to go to the software that has the BX format and type in your text and do a file save as, and save it as a DST or EXP or whatever format you want. Otherwise, you're limited to bringing in each letter one at a time. So I did do that beforehand. I went over and grabbed, let's see, sam.dst. So this is a font I had in BX format. I went into the BX software, typed out my name, did a file save as, and here we go. And here I just opened it up directly into DesignShop. I didn't have to import each letter one at a time. Now, if you don't have that, you literally have to bring in one element at a time. Okay, so each letter one at a time, line them up, and that's just how it's done. The BX format's proprietary to that software, and if you tried opening it, you'd see it's just a bunch of garbage characters, and that's because it's encrypted or some other way hidden, so the format for it isn't available for us to be able to program around. Okay, well, what other questions do we have? All right. Best backing choices for various apparel items and Solvy tips. So I know when I started off doing embroidery, I got that packet, one of every type of stabilizer, and I went, that's cool. I'm going to order one of everything. Guess what? I still have one of everything because a lot of it I don't use. It's cool, but it's not always the most practical for different applications. For the most part, I think I've come down to using predominantly 3 stabilizers for the most part. The no-show, so some sort of something for performance wear that's lightweight. There's a bunch of different options. There's the new cut performance. There's the no-show mesh, which is kind of like a nylon. It doesn't have much stretch, but it's very lightweight. So those two are pretty much comparable for performance wear. And then I use a 2.5 ounce and a 3.1 ounce cutaway. I'm really not a big fan of tearaway unless I have to use it, like on towels or bags where I don't want to see, you know, a cutout badge on the back. But so that's just my personal preferences. So it's, you know, there are so many different backings that there's actually, I put the website right here, but it's Madeira has a really good guide that has all kinds of information and guidelines for you. So if you go there, you can see based on what you're doing, the different options you have. Like I said, most of the time what I use is either this no-show for any performance or lightweight things, the 2.5 cut just right, or the 3.1. I love this stuff. It's my favorite stabilizer ever. The Super Hefty Plus 3.1 ounce. I love it. I use it for pretty much everything that I can get away with. Okay, but as far as dealing with Solvy, there was a video, I'll see if we can find the link for you, that when you have the Solvy on top, when you rip off your Solvy, keep that scrap, okay, and have a little spray bottle of water, and if you just spritz it lightly and then take your leftovers, and right when it starts to gum up, go and put that stabilize, you know, the leftovers on it and pull up, you'll see that the little gummy parts that are left on your fabric will stick over here. So that's just a little trick. There is a video, Nate did that on one of the finishing garments videos, I believe, but it works really well. And before I saw that, I literally was with my little eraser, get a pencil with an eraser, and I'd sit there and flick them all off and get angry because I really hate picking Solvy. I just don't like it. So learning that little trick helped immensely. But Yeah, I would say the backing guide is probably a really good one. Having a heavy tearaway is always a good idea to give you some options with bags and towels and things like that. But like I said, I'm a big fan of cutaway stabilizers. I love them. It keeps everything so stable so you get nice clean embroidery. All right, I have V7, so I can put my EMC10. Can I use V11 designs in V7? I yes, I don't see why not. You would have to save it off as a DST file, I would assume. That's one of the older formats, or an EXP. But yeah, you can digitize in V11, do a file save as, and save it off in whatever format you need for that. Yeah, and Chris on YouTube said with Solvay, if you spray with enough water, it dissolves. Yes, I'm lazy. I don't want to wait for things to dry or worry about not putting quite enough water to dissolve it all. So I just spritz, tack it off, and throw it in a box. Anyway, let's see, what else do we have? But yeah, Kathy, yes, you could just save off whatever format you want. Someone said they're new at digitizing. I tried using a vector image. I actually have a file to pull up for this. So basically, they converted to stitches, and now they want to clean it up. All right, so where's DesignShop? There we are. File, open. Let's go get the whiskey and lace. Design. Start with what they sent me. And there is another question later on that this is actually a good example. So when it came to me, it was like this. All right. So just real quick before I forget it, there's a question coming up that says, hey, when I send a design over to my machine, no matter how much I click hoop bullseye, it's not centering. It leaves it off outside of the hoop limits, and I can't do anything. Why? Well, that's because if you come over into DesignShop, turn on this design origin, this right here is the center of the hoop where those two red lines cross. So you see right here, my design is off to the right. So no matter how much I do hoop bullseye, it's not going to center it right here. It's going to center here, and my design is going to be off to the right. So within DesignShop, you've got this right here to center design. If you click on that, now it's centered on the crosshairs, the origin of the file. And now when you send it over, when you do hoop bullseye, it'll center directly on your hoop. Okay. All right. So back to this question. So this one says, hey, I did an auto convert from a vector, and now I've got this. It's kind of okay, but I'm not happy with it. I need to clean it up. What do I do? Okay. So when you do a conversion, a lot of times you'll have things like this where you've got fill, you've got satin, and that's just because it did a flat conversion. So it's always, it's quick because you've got the 90% solution, but taking a little time to clean it up helps a lot. So what I would do is zoom in on an area that's bothering you. So for instance, this one, and I'm going to come over and insert splice. So when you select something, these 4 keys right here are editing. So that adds holes, this adds splices, that changes your starts and stop, and that's a stitch direction. So these allow you to make modifications to things that are already there. So first thing I'm going to do is add some splice lines. So I'm going to put one here, and let's make the H go across. And you can do whatever you want with this, but what I'm trying to do is add some areas so that now I can change my stitch directions to give it some more definition. Lorena, can you send us you said you've done exactly that about centering, and then in OS it's off, so it's because of the Bravo? No, it should not be because of your Bravo. So if you have a file that's doing that, if you can send it to applications@melco.com and let us take a look at it and see its without looking at it, I can't give you an exact answer. So if you could send it over, I'll take a quick look and see what we got. Okay, so I added some splices. Now I'm going to come over with it still selected, and you see right here, insert stitch direction. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to start off. Oh, so check this out. This is this warning pops up. So this original file was created in an older version of DesignShop. So this is just a warning telling me, hey, if you make changes, now it's going to be newer software. It's going to change it. That's fine. That's what I want it to do anyway. So that's just kind of your warning. that it's going to do stuff. And now you can go through and add stitch directions to these different elements to get the stitches to lay how you expect them to lay through there. So you can see with just a few quick add some splices and stitch directions, we're good to go. Now you'll see through here I still have some fill. Why is that? Well, if I measure it with my ruler, you'll see I'm kind of on the hairy edge of what's acceptable. So that's around 71 points. So I'm assuming if I go into the properties here and look, so let's go look. Yeah, right here, use fill for stitch lines greater than, it's set to 60. So what that's telling us is that if any stitch is larger than 60 points or 6 millimeters, what's going to happen is it's going to convert it over into a fill. So you either decide you like that, or now you got to do something else, make it narrower, change the size. I don't know, I'm kind of obsessed with split fill right now, and I can't give you a good reason as to why, other than for some reason I really love the look right now. So I've been doing a whole lot of auto splits. So that was down here, auto split. Scott was laughing at me the other day because I was going on and on and on about how much I love auto split. I don't know why, but anyway. So you can do stuff like that to make, I think it makes it look more intentional. We still have to clean up over here by adding more stitch directions. But what you'll see is when you deal with these converted files, it's just a matter of looking through it like this. I'm guessing those points are way too small. And I could quick check it by over here using the design checker, which is a new feature for 11. So this will show when you've got areas of concern, and sure enough, column stitches are under 10 points, which means they're way too narrow, because a 7511 needle is 7.5 points. So if I've got something that's 10 points or less, I'm going to be hammering the same hole and just messing up the fabric rather than making a nice clean stitch. So you can address that by adding pull offset till it goes away, changing the shape. There's different ways to correct it, but you just play with it until it sews out cleaner. So making it wider, that would be a good start there. And you just work your way through the design, looking at the different areas you don't like these scissors. I would probably add some splices so that I can change the stitch direction and make it look more like the two pieces that overlap. There's a weird hole in the middle of this guy. I'd probably select that hole. So how do you delete a hole? Let's cover that real quick. Select a shape. Once it's selected, I can click on the hole and see how it's got a box around it. Well, now I can delete that hole. So now I don't have that random hole in the middle of it. And then I could probably get rid of that random circle. And I'm going to get rid of that one. I'm going to take this bean stitch, hold my shift key. No, let's just draw a new circle. So a single line center, circle, click, click, done. Hold my shift key. Here. Anyway, it's a little wide, but you get the idea. When you do auto converts, spending a little bit of time working your way through the design and thinking about it and seeing what makes sense as far as how do you want it to look. So if you don't like that fill in there, okay, add some splices, add some stitch directions, and go. So let's see what else. We had some other suggestions that were typed in on Facebook that wrap, let's see. Oh, that's cool. So that trick I said about taking the leftover solvy, you can wrap it around a tennis ball and then use that to take bits of your solvy off the article as well. I like that. I might try that. All right. So what else on YouTube? With a magnet hoop 13 by 4.25, can you do the straighten it in the hoop like you do with a 10 by 10 by doing a left? Yeah. Yes, you can. Okay. So I think what you're asking is, can you use laser alignment to straighten up a design within there? Absolutely. So if you hoop it, so let's say your garment's crooked in there. Now that particular hoop is pretty darn narrow, right? So you don't have a whole lot of swing to be able to hoop crooked, but yeah, you absolutely can by using your laser commands, which I actually think I keep in this file because they always come up. So yes, when you would have to have guidelines of where your 2 points are, but then laser left, laser bullseye, it'll rotate along the line you have and then line it back up. So yeah, you can do that. Another one that was typed in on YouTube, is it possible to make a template before you start designing? Like a template for caps and things like that? Absolutely. In fact, I make templates all the time. So we talked about this one. All right. So typically what I'll use for templates is you can make them in Illustrator or CorelDRAW, whatever your program, your program of choice. I just do them within DesignShop because it's one less step. So over here, if you hold down the complex fill and pull out, you'll see you have a vector fill. So let's say you want to, you want to limit it to your design to fill within a certain area. Well, oops, cancel that. So if I do vector, I'm going to select the automatic input shape of a rectangle, select it, draw a shape, and then down here I can set it to whatever size I want. So let's say you want to limit it to 2 inches tall, and for whatever reason you want to stick to 3 by 2 or something like that. Okay, so you can draw there. You can also center it, if things like that. So yes, you can use the vector fills and the vector lines right here to draw whatever templates you want. With lettering, they're really helpful to keep all your text even and whatnot. So yeah, you can, whatever you want your template to look like, draw it, and it'll say here as your vector list. Vectors don't sew, so it's just there in the file. Question was typed in, is that laser sheet available on the Melco website? Yeah, it's in the manual actually. So it's not in the DS manual, it's in the OS manual because that's a function of the operating system of the machine. But if you click on the question mark within the OS, you can bring it up and look for registration and you'll have it there. Okay. I think it's registration. No, look for laser alignment or laser registration. I forget what keys to look for, but you type in laser and just pan through and you'll find it that way. But it's in the OS manual, that same chart. That's actually where I grabbed it from, that screenshot. All right, what other ones? Okay, no others typed in for the moment, so I'm going to go back to my pre-sent ones. Okay. Can you go through the procedure for copying hoops from DS10 and placing them into DS11? Okay, so if you created your own custom hoops, what you would want to do is, I'm trying to think. Okay, so before you install V11, good morning, you would take your hoops and you'd want to go in and just do screenshots or take pictures of your setup, because there is no, it's really a can of worms you don't want to get into. I tried to with Nate, trying to convince him to let me show you, dig into the details. Not a good idea. That's what it boiled down to. So you can come over on your hoop right here and right click. That'll bring up your hoop manager. Go find whatever hoop you want. Click on edit the shape. And you want to basically take a screenshot or a picture of the setup. So whatever you did for your setup, you'll want to get that, because once you install, your hoop database is going to be overwritten. So any custom hoops you have that you want to save and preserve and bring into 11, take quick screenshots of them. Keep in mind, Melco's been updating the MDB files on a regular basis. So when you do the new install, older hoops or newer hoops are already automatically going to come into the software anyway, because they've been added to the database. So you won't need your custom hoops for a lot. But let's say there is one you built custom for yourself. Then what you would want to do is come over here. Go, before you do 11, open it up, take your screenshots from V11 now. You would go into your hoop manager, add a new hoop, give it whatever name you like, and type in all the same parameters. So it's not a quick copy and paste sort of thing. So that's a little bit annoying, if you will, but it gets done pretty quick. All right. So, it looks like, Travis, I forgot your EMB question. Yeah, the EMB files aren't saved out of DesignShop. So they answered that for you. Sorry, I missed that one. Okay, is there a PDF of the fonts included in V11, Gina? So, no, but what I did, and I created this file right here. It's 220 pages, so I don't want to reprint it for you. But I'll show you how I did it. So this is all the fonts in V11, and I just saved this off as a PDF so that I could then pass the link to my clients. So how I generated that was from this lettering. I just right clicked on it, and then up here I said print all and just changed it to save it as a PDF. So I did ask if they had one similar to what Nate showed on Wednesday's video with all the new fonts. I did ask Scott if there was any way he would be able to generate all the fonts in DS that way, and he added it to his list of things to do in the future. So maybe we'll get a combined list that doesn't have all the code sheets, it's just the names. We'll see. Okay, so yeah, I print to PDF, and that's what I have. Like, I literally save this out on my Dropbox and give this link to my clients and say, there you go, all the fonts for your viewing pleasure. Okay. Well, what other questions do we have? All right, so that was this one. When I do a design in DS and import into OS, it's not centered. Okay, so that's Lorena. If you send over that file, we'll take a look. I covered that one. Any tips on doing Letterman jackets? So I'm kind of curious what specific issues you're trying to solve. I mean, it's a thicker material, so I mean, it's pretty much up your active feet a little bit. Make sure you're designing your digitizing is more appropriate for heavier materials, and then go for it. Make sure you have good stabilizer. You don't want, if it's fleece or something like that, you don't want it moving around. So making sure you hoop well to kind of prevent motion. If it's a fabric that is very tending to want to push around, using a spray adhesive helps, tack it down to your cutaway so it really can't go anywhere. There's a document out on the FAQ site for doing Carhartts. A lot of those same techniques, using a larger needle, hooping well, using, especially if it's thicker, using a, what is that called? The mighty hoops or things like that. They help hold it, whereas your regular hoops, their materials are just so thick that it's going to drop out. Using one of the tables for the machines helps support it so that you don't get that pull down, that drag, which can mess with your registration. So those are some excellent things to think about. But if you have specific problems you're having, let me know and we can address those specifically. Travis, your question cracked me up. I'm not going to Alaska this year. Cold. I'm from Florida. I don't know. Well, I can ask around for you. I don't know who's going up there, but we can find out for you. All right, so how can you increase or decrease your design? All right, so scaling. Let's look at that. So let me turn off my hoop. Why don't we open something? So I don't want to open that one. Let's open, I don't know. I'm just opening something. All right, so I've got this. So scaling designs down here, you've got the W or the H. So first off, whenever you want to scale something, you got to select it first. Different ways to select. You can left click and drag a box around it. Now keep in mind, it will only select what's fully boxed in. Okay, so if I do this box, look what's going to happen. It's not going to get the rest of these because it's not fully boxed in. All right, so if you want it to select everything by dragging, you got to do it that way. You can, of course, come over here, and if you click in your project view, that top M, that will give you a selection of the entire font or the entire design. If you want just partial, you can come down and select one at a time or click on them. But bottom line is you have to select what you want to scale first. Then from there, you notice the box that's around it. If it has black handles here, that's a scaling mode. That's awesome. So you can scale by dragging. Notice it's letting me do crazy things. Now, do we want to do this? Probably not, right? Not a good idea. So when you're scaling, keep in mind you can hold your shift key to lock it, lock X and Y. All right, so you can scale that way. You can also notice that also when I click and drag, but while holding my shift key on my keyboard, it's scaling from opposite of wherever I clicked. Okay, so what if I want it to scale from the center? Okay, alternate allows it to scale from the center. If I hold shift and alternate, it's going to lock your X and Y coordinates, and it's going to scale from the center. Okay, so you can also scale by percent, and to do that you got a few options. You can right click, you can go to scale, and you can scale up here either by size or by percent. Down here where you have the W and the H, you can who's calling me? Nope. Physical therapy for my foot. Okay, so here oh yeah, W and the H, if you click on either of those, you can scale by percent down here. Or if you want to say make it 3 inches wide, I can make it 3 inches wide down here. Keep in mind this locks X and Y, the aspect ratio. So what if I want it 3 wide and 5 tall? Well, I'd have to turn off that aspect ratio to make it scale, or 8 tall, just to be ridiculous. If it doesn't blow up, we'll see. Yeah, there you go. All right. Okay, so there's a question about that was typed in. It's also one I have a little bit later, but go ahead and cover it. It said, can you add a stroke to a font? All right, so by adding stroke, are you talking about making it bolder? Oops, not what I wanted to do. Making it bolder or adding an outline? Okay, because I've seen stroke, graphic designers typically refer to stroke, and it's either to add outlines or just to make something look bolder than it is. So either way, you can adjust it multiple ways. It's not called a stroke within the embroidery world, but Tommy, so if you can let me know, I can address it either way. But here, let's say I've got my text and I want it to be bolder. So you want to add outlines. Okay, so double click on your text. Let's start there. Right here you have auto borders. You can turn that on, hit apply, and that will add a border to your design. Okay, now from here you can adjust that border. Let's say you want it wider. Let's say you want to change the density of it. So everything under auto borders right here allows you to adjust the properties of that outline. So let's say you want to change the density, you can do that. If you want to do a center walk rather than an edge walk, things like that, you can do it. Now, if what you're really wanting is to just make text larger, wider, make it bolder, you don't want to put a border on it, you just want it to be bolder than it is. Okay, well, let's turn off our auto borders. So making it bolder is just a matter of adjusting your pull compensation. Okay, so that's going to be here under compensation, which by the way is now also on, where is it? There it is. It's also on this property bar. So it didn't used to be here, but now it is. So it's also here for you to be able to adjust. But what that's going to do is it's basically, instead of sewing this stitch here and this stitch here, you're going to tell it how far to overstitch. All right, and it's, so if you have, I'm going to make it a big silly number. So 6 points of offset means it's going to oversew from wherever originally was planned by 12 points. It's going to do 6 points larger here and 6 points larger here. Okay, that's a lot. In general, 1 to 3 is plenty for most things, but all that offset is going to do is make it look bolder. I strongly prefer offset over pull percent, because pull percent is multiplication. The other one is just a flat number of how much larger it's going to go. When you're dealing with a percent, you can add some distortions into your designs. A really easy way to see this is if I draw a square. Let's change my stitch direction to, oh, that's a vector. Huh. All right, so let's add a stitch direction to make it a fill. And now I'm going to do something silly and put like a percent of 150. Okay, that no longer looks like a rectangle anymore, right? Because what it's doing is it's looking at the distance from one side to the other, and it's overstitching it by 50%, right? So 50% of a small number is still a pretty small number, whereas from here, if I go along from this side all the way to the other side, it's a much larger number. Okay, so you can end up adding distortions if you're not careful with percent. So I tend to stay with offset. It's just a personal preference. So there's no right or wrong. You'll find we all do our own things, and that's great. That's what makes it unique. There was a question about shortcuts, a list of the keyboard shortcuts. They gave you a link to those. They're on the FAQ site where you can look up the accelerator keys. That's what they're the terms you'd want to look up, and or hotkeys, and that will give you all the little shortcuts. You can of course program your own, and that's here under Accelerator Editor. So if you go Tools, Accelerator Editor, you can find whatever you want. So let's say you want hide graphics. You can program a short key on your keyboard, type in whatever it is, and that will be the new assigned key for that particular item. Okay, so let's see. Oh, Travis, software suggestion. All right, I'm not going to do that right now if it's a suggestion, because I can't demo a suggestion. So what else do we have? Gosh, I'm goofy, I'm sorry. All right, so how to increase or decrease your design. We talked about that. Can you take an expanded design, convert it to a vector, and then turn it into stitches? Yes, you can. That's a whole lot of work. So when you convert over to, so let's say you open a design and you say, select the elements, convert to vector. Well, it's going to convert it all, and then you're going to sit there and stare at it and have to now digitize it all from hand. So yes, you can do it. It's just you're creating a lot of work for yourself. If there are specific things within an expanded you want to modify, it's usually better to focus on that. So let's say there's, it's broken up. This isn't an expanded, but let's just pretend it was. And this is the only thing you want to modify of the entire design. We'll select that, do operations, and then you can convert to stitches or convert to wireframe, and then modify just that. The fewer conversions you do, the fewer changes you're going to have to make. So that would be my suggestion, is just minimize the amount of conversions you want to do and only convert what you need to modify. And remember, don't forget, you also have the ability to do expanded point editing. And what that is if this were expanded, you can, even if it's not, you can still do this. I can click here on expanded editing mode. That gives me all the stitches. So all these dots are the needle penetrations, so I can individually move stitches around. Is that the most efficient way to do it? No, wireframe is easier. It's quicker. But you can do, if all you're trying to do is delete a random stitch from a file or add a tie or something like that, you can add a few stitches and call it done. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have? Can you show how to choose a font in DS11 and edit the colors or add a stroke? So edit the colors, I didn't do that. We did talk about stroke. So let's go look at editing colors. I'm just going to make some text. How about that? Let's do a new file, text, block. All right, so I have some text. And I just typed that out, hit enter, called it done. Now, you can make changes as you're going. So I can type in a letter, click over here, type in another letter, and I can keep on choosing different colors and typing things. Okay, and that will give me, 4 color changes for this. So that's one way. Or if you type it and then you decide, oh, I want every other letter a different color. Okay, what do? You want to modify it, so select your shape first. So I got to select the lettering element. Then you see these little X's. That allows you to select and adjust each letter individually. So once you have a box around it, now I can go give that a color. And you can go give them whatever colors you want. Okay. And then if you don't like the colors in the color palette here, that's okay. You can right click on it, go to color, change it to whatever thread chart you like. Okay. Whether you're using Madeira or Isacord, whatever. And let's say I want that to be 1637 instead. And maybe I want this one to be 1832 instead of that weird plummy color. I want it to be more purpley. So you can modify your colors. It gives them each the multiple color changes. Is there a way to add a tie off before a jump and a tie in after the jump without doing a trim? Yeah, you can. Yes, you can tell it to always do trims on the element and then have it do a jump stitch. So here, for instance, if I go into the tie in and tie off properties, if I make this large, okay, so there's always going to be connector stitches in there if I do an update. and I change this to always, there's always going to be your tie-in and tie-outs, and then it's just going to drag thread around. Well, all right, this is actually larger where it's still large enough to do a trim. Trim between words, let's make that 300. I'm just making it big to force the issue. Oh, it's because it's all color changed. Duh. Okay, there we go. So you can see the little tie off stitch there. It leaves the jump stitch. There's a tie in, which you could see if it weren't in 3D, but yeah, there you go. So it's always doing your tie offs. Okay. So yes, you can force the tie offs without doing a physical trim. What other questions do we have? All right, how to make a file for a cap or a beanie. Caps, you want, basically the rule of thumb for caps is you want to sew away from things that are rigid. So what's rigid on a cap? The brim of the hat, the center seam. So that's why you always hear people say, okay, for hats, make sure it's from bottom to top and center out. And why is that? Because you don't want to sew towards things that don't move, because that's going to shove the fabric down and you're going to end up with puckers. So by sewing up, that pushes away from the brim. By sewing out, you're pushing away from that center seam, and that's going to give you the best sewing. So it really, there is no magic, poof, make it so bottom to top, center out. For text there is, but for regular files, you got to plan it. You got to go, all right, I need to do, you know, I got to do this line of text, center out. Then I've got to do this logo. I'm going to do this part of the fill, you know, do my underlay half and half, and then do the fill straight across. And then you got to plan it out to make sure you're doing center out. Or maybe straight across, you do bottom up for the fill, but you have your underlay go center out, things like that. So you really just have to work your way through the design. But the key is bottom to top, center out. Travis, leaving the jumps, that will keep it sewing fast, right? Yes. So if you leave jump stitches in, it leaves them. It just makes more cleanup work afterwards. So there's a trade-off, right? So if you're going to be grabbing your little scissors and playing cleanup after the fact versus letting the machine trim and do the trim, the move, the tie-in, and then the start, there's a trade. So it's, you know, whatever's most cost efficient for your shop. Okay. How about issues within bad digitizing designs? Is there ways around fixing it using the software? Of course. There is a really good video. It's about an hour long that was done last year. I think April time frame. I don't know. It's this one right here. So if you go to YouTube and search for that, we'll try to get you a link as well. But diagnosing or repairing bad designs, he kind of goes through the top 10 things to look at. You know, there's so many things, but there are that you can do that will sew, but you could sew better, or that just are going to give you problems, but by changing a few things, it'll now sew out beautifully. So, you know, I listed some of them here. There's, if you sew things too thin, like on that W on the whiskey and lace design, it's so thin, basically you're going to stab the fabric over and over in the same spot that you're not going to create enough friction to create the loop to make the stitch, or you're going to tear up the fabric. So either way is not a good solution. It's going to cause you skip stitches possibly, or slingshots, shredded thread, things like that. So by having columns larger than 10 points or so, now with the design checker, you can see all that stuff. So it'll tell you when you have columns smaller than 10, when you have too many layers on top of each other, things like that. Tie stitches, having no tie stitches means you're going to have just two tails hanging out on the back of your fabric. Well, depending on how it's washed, it's going to come undone over time. That's no good. You want to make sure you have a tie off, and then you want to tie in to make, I always look at tie-ins are for embroiderers' sanity. The tie-offs are for our clients. Tie-ins, if without a tie-in, have you ever noticed you just drag thread around until it catches with the bobbin? Because you just make a stitch, jump 20 points, make another stitch. And you didn't give it a lock stitch to tie it to the bobbin. So by having a tie-in, that's going to lock the top and the bottom together. So no ties is a big thing. Too many tie stitches. What that ends up doing is putting a whole bunch of tiny stitches right next to each other. So you're just going to be hammering the same hole over and over again and creating thread break problems. Okay. Stacking. Have you ever seen designs that are bulletproof where you stack, fill upon fill upon fill, and next thing you know, you're just struggling to bang through it? Well, you don't need that many. You want to, multiple layers is again another bad practice. You'd want to add holes underneath. So, rather than digging through stitch by stitch, it's really convenient with MV11 to just open a design, go to the design checker, and then work through the problems it gives you. You can click it on here. I've gotten really accustomed to doing that. I have a larger monitor. Or you can click down here, and here are all the areas I need to address. And if I click on it, it'll actually show you where that is. So it's this element has things that are too narrow. So I can go work on that particular one. This one has things that are too narrow. Are tie-in and tie-off set automatically when using DS fonts, or do you have to add them? They should be the defaults. Let's go see. So you can check your defaults. Oops. Hey, if you ever do that, people always do. Hey, I got rid of my project view. How do I bring it back? So, and they'll go, hey, all my toolbars are on. What gives? It's not a toolbar. It's a project view. So you'd want to come over under View, Project View. There. I closed it. I didn't want to close it. There you go. All right. So to see your defaults, start a new file. Always start from new. That way you can see what your current defaults are. So right here on the letter A is, since you're talking about lettering, right click on it, and that will bring up your property box. Whatever you see here are the current defaults. So I have auto underlay turned on. I have no pull offset. I like pull offset, so I'm going to add one. So I'm going to say, all right, I want some pull offset on everything using auto density. That's fine. Yes. So tie-in style 1, which is good. The auto trims, I prefer this to be smaller. 32 is the default. But so like I said, you can see what your defaults are and modify them. Once you change it, up here you can say save current settings to default and overwrite your defaults permanently. And now, what I see here are now my defaults for new files. Okay. All right. What other things do we have? Gina, this was your question. We already talked about it, of printing to a PDF. I did ask if they can make a more compact list for us. I didn't get any promises on it, but I'll try. Okay. And what other questions? That was all of them. So let me quick scan my list to make sure I didn't skip things in my haste to move on to things I like. We talked about that. We did that. Yeah. Yes, you can also choose to trim between letters rather than changing that parameter down to lower. You can say trim between every letter and it will automatically do that within the settings. We did those. We did that. We talked about backing. Talked about the BX files. I love this. I don't have it for you, but I love it. And we did rotations. Okay, sweet. I don't have any other questions. Do you guys? I don't see any typed in. So that is all I had for the day, guys. So if there's any other questions you have, again, you can feel free to type them in. Send them into applications@milco.com. Type them in. I usually post pictures of the DesignShop Talk cover sheet with a, hey, do you have any questions, in about 4 of the groups online on Facebook, just polling for questions so I have something to talk to other than myself or stare at the screen looking silly. So I hope these are helpful for you. Let us know how we can help, and I guess I will talk to you guys next week with whatever questions you might have. All right? Happy weekend.